and welcome to Springfield Career Insights. Tonight, we confront a silent sabotage in governance, the recycling of incompetence across boards. Is board continuity a safeguard of stability or a conspiracy of mediocrity? We explore how institutions, by recycling the same ineffective leaders, erode trust, punish innovation, and trap themselves in cycles of failure. In this episode, we ask, why do organizations tolerate incompetence? Should board appointments be treated as ceremonial rewards or as civic mandates for competence and renewal? We are joined by His Excellency Dr. Godfrey Gandawa, President of Springfield Research University, strategist of continental governance, and ceremonial architect of lawful innovation. His work reframes board service as a sovereign duty, not a recycled privilege. Welcome, President. We are honored to host you.
Thank you, Dr. Advocate. At Springfield, we believe that leadership is not recyclable. It must be renewed. Boards must elevate competence, safeguard accountability, and strengthen institutional sovereignty. Recycling incompetence is not tradition. It is betrayal of progress.
Thank you, Professor. Professor, why do organizations keep recycling the same incompetent leaders across boards?
So thank you, Advocate. Organizations recycle incompetence because they confuse familiarity with competence. They mistake longevity for loyalty and loyalty for leadership. Instead of renewing boards with fresh vision, they recycle the same names, the same failures, the same mediocrity. It is the comfort of the known, the fear of disruption, the conspiracy of convenience. But recycling incompetence is not continuity, it is complacency. It is the silent sabotage of progress, the betrayal of innovation, the erosion of trust. Recycling incompetence is the theater of stagnation. The same actors, the same script, the same collapse. It is the betrayal of shareholders, the insult to employees, the deception of citizens. It is the moment when institutions choose convenience over courage, repetition over renewal, mediocrity over merit. So I say, boards must be renewed, not recycled. Leadership must be chosen for competence, not convenience, for vision, not familiarity, for sovereignty, not stagnation. For only in renewal lies resilience, and only in competence lies the future of governance.
Thank you, Professor. Professor, we often see the same incompetent individual sitting on multiple government boards at once. From your perspective, what does this trend reveal about governance and accountability?
So thank you, Advocate. So this trend is not coincidence. You see, it is conspiracy. When one incompetent individual is multiplied across several boards, mediocrity is not only tolerated, it is institutionalized. It reveals a governance culture that rewards loyalty over competence, familiarity over merit, stagnation over renewal. So such appointments are not about leadership. You see, they are about control. The same failing voice echoes across institutions, suffocating innovation, recycling mediocrity, and spreading incompetence like contagion. It is the betrayal of governance, the erosion of accountability, the silent sabotage of progress. Advocate, when one incompetent man, because in most cases, men are culprits, when one incompetent man sits on many boards, it is not governance. It is capture. It is recycling of failure, the duplication of mediocrity, the multiplication of collapse. Institutions become mirrors of each other's weaknesses. Citizens inherit the same betrayal in different forms, and trust evaporates across public sphere. Advocate, competence must be diversified, not duplicated. Boards must be renewed with fresh vision, not recycled with the same failing names. For the future of governance depends not on multiplying incompetence, but on multiplying sovereignty, accountability, and merit.
Thank you, Professor. Professor, if I may be too direct, can you illustrate what you mean, and are there examples if you can pick if possible?
Thank you, Advocate. Yeah. Yes. There are too many examples. And I can tell you this trend has destroyed parastatals and government departments alike. They are killing the country. They are killing the kingdom. They are killing countries. These individuals are appointed to multiple boards, yet they neglect the very duties they were employed to perform. Instead of serving with diligence, they spend their days shuttling between board meetings, spreading mediocrity across institutions. They are no longer doing the work that they are employed to do in their ministry, because they sit on so many boards. They are shuttling about board meetings. It is dangerous. It is pathetic. It is sabotage disguised as service. Imagine, for instance, one man sitting on the Higher Education Regulatory Board while also occupying a seat on the Scholarship Board, while serving on a university task force, while heading another government department, while also sitting in the National Curriculum Board. This is not competence. It is capture. It is the duplication of failure, the multiplication of mediocrity, the institutionalization of incompetence. Some of these appointments even create direct conflicts of interest, yet no one seems to notice. No one seems to correct. No one seems to demand accountability. The silence is complicity. The tolerance is betrayal. The repetition is sabotage. Advocate, these individuals are not guardians of governance. They are saboteurs of government. They multiply mediocrity. They recycle failure. They spread incompetence like contagion. Their selfishness corrodes institutions, betrays citizens, and erodes trust in governance. So I said, Advocate, one incompetent man on many boards is not leadership. It is sabotage. It is the betrayal of meritocracy, the erosion of accountability, the silent collapse of governance. And unless this trend is confronted, and I mean it, institutions will continue to bleed dignity, progress, and sovereignty.
Thank you, Professor. What damage does this recycling cause to governance and institutional trust?
Thank you, Advocate. So recycling incompetence corrodes governance like rust on steel. It eats away the foundations of institutions, slowly but relentlessly, until dignity collapses under the weight of what? Of mediocrity. It erodes transparency, undermines accountability, and normalizes failure as it will acceptable practice. So institutions lose credibility when the same failed leaders are recycled into position of power. Citizens watch as incompetence is rewarded instead of punished, and trust collapses like a bridge stripped of its pillars. Governance becomes theater, grand performances without substance. Boards become echo chambers, repeating the same voices, the same failures, the same excuses. Institutions become monuments of failure, structures that stand tall but are hollow within. Advocate, recycling incompetence is not harmless. It is corrosive. It destroys trust, sabotages governance, and betrays the future. It is the silent poison that seeps into the bloodstream of institutions, weakening them from within. It is the betrayal of meritocracy, the erosion of accountability, the normalization of mediocrity. So I say, governance cannot afford rust. Boards cannot afford corrosion. Institutions cannot afford betrayal. Renewal is not a choice. It is a sovereign necessity. For only in renewal lies resilience, and only in competence lies the future of governance.
Thank you, Professor.
What civic or legal frameworks should exist to prevent incompetent leaders from being reappointed across multiple boards?
Thank you, Advocate. So, civic and legal frameworks must rise as guardians of competence to prevent the recycling of incompetence. Boards must be bound not by loyalty, but by law, not by familiarity, but by accountability. First, there must be term limits, a sovereign reminder that leadership is renewable, not recyclable. No individual should monopolize governance through perpetual reappointment. Second, there must be performance audit, not ceremonial reports, but rigorous evaluations that measure impact, innovation, and integrity. A leader who fails to elevate dignity must not be recycled into another institution. Third, there must be transparency in appointments, public disclosure of qualifications, track records, and failures. Communities must see not only the crowns worn, but the cracks beneath them. Finally, there must be legal consequences for negligence, frameworks that treat incompetence not as a harmless tradition, but as betrayal of progress. To recycle incompetence, Advocate, is to recycle failure, and the law must declare that betrayal of trust is not a privilege to be repeated. That civic and legal frameworks must sanctify competence as covenant. They must ensure that board service is not a recycled privilege, but a sovereign duty, renewed through merit, dignified by accountability, and elevated by justice.
Thank you, Professor. Let's take a break and listen to a song called Education 6.0.
In the heart of Springfield, where dreams ignite, a beacon of knowledge shining bright. Science, technology, engineering and more, medicine and automation we explore. Springfield leads in the way, Education 6.0, a new day. Leadership, knowledge, skills we hone, industry, manufacturing, entrepreneurship grown. Transformative learning, excellence we seek, a diverse community, strong and unique, pushing boundaries, making Entrepreneurship grown. Entrepreneurship grown. With dramatic strings and synths so bold, our story of progress proudly told. Collaborative minds, humans and machines, redefining learning, fulfilling dreams. In an era of tech, the future unfolds. Springfield's mission, strong and bold, guiding the next generation, lighting the path for a world transformed. We lead the math. Final Springfield leads in the way. Education 16.0, a new day. Leadership, knowledge, skills we hone. Industry, manufacturing, entrepreneurship grown.
Welcome back. Let's continue with our discussion. How does board stagnation affect innovation and competitiveness?
Thank you, Advocate. So board stagnation is the graveyard of innovation. When the same voices dominate, new ideas suffocate. Competitiveness collapses because recycled leaders cling to old models, old habits, old failures. Innovation requires diversity, courage, and renewal, but stagnation rewards repetition, fear, and silence. They cannot correct what they caused. They are the ones that would have created the chaos. So a stagnant board is not a garden of stability. It is a prison of progress. And Advocate, innovation dies where incompetence is recycled. Competitiveness thrives where boards are removed.
Thank you, Professor. Is recycling incompetence a cultural habit, a political compromise, or a failure of accountability?
Thank you, Advocate. It is all three. A toxic trinity of sabotage. Cultural habits whispers. We know him. We trust her. Let them stay. You see? Political compromise insists. Reward loyalty. Recycle allies. Protect the cycle. You see? Failure of accountability declares. No one will question. No one will demand renewal. Together, they conspire to recycle incompetence, to entrench mediocrity, to betray progress. They transform boards into sanctuaries of failure, institutions into monuments of stagnation, governance into theater without substance. This trinity does not preserve continuity. It actually poisons it. It does not protect stability, it sabotages it. It does not defend institutions, it corrodes them from within. And Advocate, culture must evolve, politics must reform, accountability must awaken. Culture must stop mistaking familiarity for competence. Politics must stop rewarding loyalty at the expense of merit. Accountability must stop sleeping while mediocrity multiplies. Only then will boards be renewed with competence instead of recycled failure. Only then will governance rise from theater to sovereignty, from mediocrity to merit, from betrayal to dignity.
Thank you, Professor. How do shareholders and governments tolerate repeated incompetence?
Thank you, Advocate. So shareholders and governments tolerate incompetence because silence is cheaper than confrontation. You see? You see the way I'm talking? It's costly. They say, akukhulunywa. Well, they are killing the country. So they tolerate incompetence because silence is cheaper than confrontation. They fear disruption. They fear conflict. They fear the unknown. But silence is complicity. And I don't want to be complicit. It is the quiet betrayal that allows mediocrity to reign. When shareholders fail to demand competence, they become co-authors of failure. They trade short-term comfort for long-term collapse. They sacrifice tomorrow's progress for today's convenience. And in doing so, they betray not only institutions, but the citizens who depend on them. Governance is not theater, it is trust. Boards are not stages for recycled actors. They are sovereign platforms for accountability and vision. Trust is the currents of governance. And once it is eroded, institutions collapse into cynicism, suspicion, and decay. So I say, shareholders must awaken. They must demand renewal, enforce accountability, and refuse to recycle incompetence. They must choose courage over comfort, confrontation over complicity, sovereignty over silence. For governance is not theater, it is trust. And trust must be defended, not betrayed. It is the sovereign duty of shareholders, governments, and citizens alike to guard institutions against corrosion, to insist on competence, to protect the dignity of governance.
Thank you, Professor. Professor, what role should regulators play in breaking this cycle of incompetence?
So thank you, Advocate. The regulators are the guardians of governance. Their silence is complicity. Their vigilance is sovereignty. When incompetence is recycled, regulators must intervene, not as spectators, but as architects of accountability. They must demand transparency in appointments, enforce standards of competence, and penalize mediocrity wherever it hides. A regulator who tolerates incompetence becomes a co-author of collapse. Their silence writes the script of stagnation. Their passivity signs the charter of failure. Institutions bleed when regulators sleep, and citizens suffer when guardians abandon their duty. So, Advocate, regulators must awaken. Kumele bavuke, balele. They must be the gavel that strikes against stagnation, the compass that points institutions towards renewal, the sentinel that guards against corrosion. They must transform oversight into sovereignty, vigilance into vision, accountability into action. For governance without regulators is theater without guardians, law without enforcement, trust without defense. And only when regulators rise with courage will institutions rise with competence, boards with integrity and governance with dignity.
Thank you, Professor. How does board recycling undermine meritocracy?
Thank you, Advocate. You talk meritocracy. Meritocracy is the sovereign promise that competence will be rewarded, that excellency will be elevated, that vision will be honored. So, board recycling betrays that promise. It elevates loyalty over skill, familiarity over vision, mediocrity over merit. So, it transforms governance into a closed circle where names matter more than ideas, where allegiance matters more than innovation, where failure is rewarded with repetition. So it tells young professionals that excellence is irrelevant, that competence is expendable, that progress is optional. So it whispers to the next generation, do not strive for mediocrity will be recycled while merit will be ignored. You see? And in that whisper, ambition dies, innovation strangled, and institutions collapse under the weight of what? Of betrayal. Meritocracy collapses when incompetence is recycled and institutions collapse with it. So the promise of progress becomes the theater of stagnation. The covenant of competence becomes the conspiracy of convenience. Advocate, recycling incompetence is not continuity. You see? It is betrayal. It is the silent sabotage of meritocracy, the erosion of trust, the corrosion of progress. It is the moment when governance ceases to be sovereign and becomes a theater, when boards cease to be platforms of vision and become monuments of what? Of failure. So I say, meritocracy must be defended and not betrayed. Boards must reward competence, not recycle mediocrity. For only in merit lies sovereignty, and only in competence lies the future of governance.
Thank you, Professor.
What lessons can Africa's institutions draw from this recycling crisis, and how might Springfield's model of lawful innovation inspire renewal across the continent?
Thank you, Advocate. So, Africa's institutions must learn that recycling incompetence is not continuity, it is captivity. Each time mediocrity is reappointed, progress is betrayed, innovation is punished, and sovereignty is diminished. The lesson is clear. Loyalty without competence corrodes trust, and tradition without renewal becomes tyranny. From this crisis, institutions must draw three truths. First, that governance must be meritocratic, not ceremonial. Second, that accountability must be systemic, not selective. And third, that renewal must be designed as covenant, not accident. Springfield's model of lawful innovation offers a path forward. We treat board service not as recycled privilege, but as sovereign duty. Our framework insists on performance audits, transparent appointments, and multi-sensory accountability, ensuring that leadership is renewable, dignified, and elevated by law. If Africa's institutions embrace this model, they will transform betrayal into blueprint. They will sanctify competence as covenant, and they will inaugurate a continent renaissance where boards no longer recycle failure, but renew sovereignty. Thus, the recycling crisis becomes not a tombstone, but a threshold, and Springfield's lawful innovation becomes the architecture of Africa's renewal.
Is the recycling of incompetency a symptom of fear of change, fear of innovation, fear of accountability?
Thank you, Advocate. Yes, yes. The recycling of incompetence is the theater of fear. It is the fear of change, where institutions cling to the familiar even when the familiar has failed. It is the fear of innovation, where new ideas are treated not as renewal, but as threat. And it is the fear of accountability, Advocate, where boards prefer silence to scrutiny, loyalty to law, and comfort to competence. Fear becomes the invisible constitution of mediocrity. It whispers, better the weakness we know than the strength we must test. And so incompetence is recycled, not because it is worthy, but because courage is absent. But sovereignty demands courage. To break the cycle, institutions must confront fear with covenant. They must declare that change is not chaos, innovation is not danger, and accountability is not punishment. It is dignity. Thus, the recycling of incompetence is indeed a symptom of fear, and the cure is sovereign leadership that sanctifies courage, elevates competence, and refuses to recycle betrayal as tradition.
Thank you, Professor. Let's take a break and listen to a song called Pathways to Tomorrow.
In the heart of Springfield, where dreams take flight, we master the art of planning day and night. Strategic vision, supplier ties so strong, inventory in control, we can't go wrong. Springfield's future, bright and grand, with logistics we take command. From warehousing to orders, we pave the way. Sustainability and growth here to stay. Risk mitigation we face with might. Warehousing wonders, distribution in sight. Order fulfillment, every step precise. Optimizing flows, we break the ice. Springfield's future, bright and grand, with logistics we take command. From warehousing to orders, we pave the way. Sustainability and growth here to stay. Doors are opening to a world so grand. In STEM fields, we proudly stand. Innovation and knowledge are guiding light. Springfield's degree, our future bright. With passion and drive, we rise above. In logistics and supply chains, we find our love. Springfield's future, bright and grand. With logistics, we take command. From warehousing to orders, we pave the way. Sustainability and growth here to stay. Together we conquer, no challenge too steep. Springfield Research University, our guiding star. In the world of logistics, we'll go far.
Welcome back. Let's continue with our discussion. What impact does this have on young, competent professionals seeking leadership roles?
Thank you, Advocate. So young professionals see the gates of leadership closed, not by merit, but by mediocrity. They watch as recycled incompetence occupies seats that should be reserved for renewal. Their innovation is stifled, their vision ignored, their competence dismissed. The promise of meritocracy becomes the theater of stagnation, and the covenant of progress becomes the conspiracy of convenience. So this breeds frustration, cynicism, and exile. Talent leaves, mediocrity remains. The brightest minds migrate to spaces where competence is honored, leaving behind institutions that bleed vision and suffocate renewal. And in that exodus, nations lose their future, societies lose their innovators, and governance loses its architects of tomorrow. So I say, recycling incompetence is not only betrayal of institutions, it is betrayal of generations. It is the theft of tomorrow by yesterday, the silencing of promise by the recycled failure. It is the moment when governance ceases to be sovereign and becomes hostage to mediocrity. And Advocate, if young professionals are denied the gates of leadership, then institutions are denied the gates of progress. Renewal is not a favor to the young. It is the sovereign necessity for the future. For only when competence is elevated will tomorrow be secured, and only when mediocrity is rejected will sovereignty be restored.
Thank you, Professor. How does incompetence at board level trickle down to operational failure?
Thank you, Advocate. So boards are the architects of vision. When incompetence dominates the boardroom, confusion dominates the workplace. Policies are misaligned, strategies are misguided, accountability is absent. The compass of governance is broken, and the institution drifts without direction. Operational teams inherit chaos. Employees inherit frustration. Customers inherit failure. The cracks at the top become fractures at the bottom. There used to be a proverb that says the fish rots from the head. Board incompetence is not contained. It cascades downward, poisoning every level of the institution. It corrodes culture. It suffocates innovation. It erodes trust. And don't forget, when boards recycle incompetence, operations recycle collapse. The failure of leadership becomes the failure of systems. The betrayal of governance becomes what? The betrayal of service. So institutions bleed dignity, progress stalls, and citizens inherit the cost of what? Of mediocrity. So I say, boards must be sovereign architects of competence, not careless recyclers of failure. For when vision is corrupted at the top, collapse is guaranteed at the bottom. But when competence is enthroned in the board, resilience flows through every corridor of the institution.
Thank you, Professor. What lessons can Africa draw from global best practices in board renewal?
Thank you, Advocate. So globally, renewal is treated as discipline, not disruption. Boards are refreshed with diversity, competence, and accountability. Term limits prevent stagnation. Transparency prevents corruption. Meritocracy prevents mediocrity. So renewal is not chaos. It is order. Renewal is not instability. It is sovereignty. Institutions thrive when boards are renewed, when competence is elevated, when accountability is enforced. They thrive when fresh vision is welcomed, when diverse voices are empowered, when integrity is enthroned. So renewal is the sovereign rhythm of governance, the discipline that ensures institutions do not delay and decay, the vigilance that ensures progress does not collapse. Africa must learn that renewal is not instability. It is sovereignty. It is the sovereign act of protecting institutions from corrosion, of defending citizens from betrayal, of ensuring that governance remains a covenant of competence. To recycle incompetence is to recycle collapse. To recycle excellence is to recycle progress. So I say, Africa must not recycle incompetence. It must recycle excellence. It must enthrone competence, evaluate merit, elevate merit, and enforce accountability. For only in excellence lies sovereignty, and only in renewal lies the future of governance.
Thank you, Professor. How can civil society pressure institutions to break cycles of incompetence?
Thank you, Advocate. So civil society is the conscience of governance. It is the vigilant eye that sees what power wishes to hide, the moral voice that speaks when institutions fall silent, the sovereign hand that demands accountability when leaders recycle failure. Civil society must refuse silence, refuse complicity, refuse recycling through advocacy, protest, and public scrutiny. It can demand competence, expose mediocrity, and enforce renewal. It is the mirror that reflects truth, the whistle that pierces deception, the drumbeat that calls institutions back to integrity. Institutions fear exposure more than collapse. You see? They fear the light of scrutiny more than the weight of failure. For collapse is slow, but exposure is immediate. Collapse is hidden, but exposure is public. Collapse is tolerated, but exposure is unforgiving. In that way, civil society must be relentless. It must be the voice that refuses recycled incompetence, the hand that demands sovereign accountability, the conscience that refuses betrayal. It must rise as the guardian of meritocracy, the defender of trust, the architects of renewal. For governance without civil society is power without conscience, authority without accountability, sovereignty without soul. And only when civil society is relentless will institutions be renewed, leaders be accountable, and the governance be dignified.
Thank you, Professor. Is recycling incompetence more prevalent in public institutions or private corporations?
Thank you, Advocate. So recycling incompetence is a disease that infects both public and private institutions. So in public institutions, it hides behind politics and patronage. In private corporations, it hides behind loyalty and convenience. But in both, the result is the same. Mediocrity rewarded, competence ignored, progress betrayed. So I say, the disease is universal, but the cure is sovereign, renewal, accountability, and competence.
Thank you, Professor.
What is the economic cost of recycling incompetence, lost innovation, stalled growth, diminished investor confidence?
Thank you, Advocate. The economic cost of recycling incompetence is not abstract. It is measurable betrayal. Each time mediocrity is reappointed, innovation is suffocated, growth is stalled, and investor confidence evaporates. Lost innovation means ideas die in silence. Projects that should ignite industries are delayed. Creativity is punished, and the continent forfeits its competitive edge. Stalled growth means institutions limp instead of lead. Resources are wasted, opportunities are missed, and communities remain trapped in cycles of dependence. Diminished investor confidence means capital flees, partnerships collapse, and sovereignty is weakened in the global market. The cost is not only financial, it is cultural. Recycling incompetence normalizes mediocrity, teaching young professionals that failure is rewarded and excellence is optional. It corrodes trust, erodes dignity, and mortgages the future. Thus, the economic cost is vast. Billions lost in productivity, decades lost in progress, and generations denied renewal. To recycle incompetence, Advocate, is to recycle poverty. To sanctify competence is to sanctify prosperity.
How does recycling incompetence punish young professionals and innovators seeking entry into leadership?
Thank you, Advocate. So, recycling incompetence punishes young professionals by turning leadership into a closed theater, where the same actors repeat their failed lines while fresh voices are silenced. It teaches innovators that merit is irrelevant, that creativity is unwelcome, and that excellence is not rewarded but excluded. For young advocates, the punishment is double. First, they are denied entry, the gates of leadership guarded by recycled mediocrity. Second, they are denied hope. The message sent is that courage, innovation, and competence will always be subordinated to loyalty and familiarity. This cycle corrodes ambition. It forces the brightest minds to migrate, to disintegrate, or to bury their gifts. Institutions lose renewal, communities lose progress, and nations lose sovereignty in the global marketplace. Thus, incompetence is not only betrayal of governance, it is betrayal of the future. It punishes the young by denying them covenant, and it punishes society by denying it renewal. To break the cycle is to sanctify competence, elevate innovation, and inaugurate a generation of leaders who carry dignity as their compass.
How can institutions design succession pipelines that prioritize competency over familiarity?
Thank you, Advocate. So, succession pipelines must be designed as covenants of competence, not corridors of familiarity. Too often, institutions recycle the known first rather than elevate the proven hand. To break this cycle, succession must be treated as architecture, not accident. First, institutions must codify meritocratic criteria. They are benchmarks of performance, innovation, and integrity that determine eligibility for leadership. So, familiarity must never outweigh competence. Second, they must institutionalize mentorship, pairing seasoned leaders with young professionals, ensuring that knowledge is transferred but not monopolized. Succession becomes renewal, not repetition. Third, they must embed transparency, public disclosure of succession plans, qualifications, and evaluations. Communities must see not only who is chosen, but why. Finally, They must sanctify diversity of thought, ensuring that succession pipelines elevate innovators, reformers, and visionaries, not merely loyalists. Renewal must be designed to expand sovereignty, not recycle mediocrity.
Wow, this is amazing. Let's take a commercial break and stay tuned.
At Springfield Research University, we don't teach to pass exams, we encode futures. Grounded in Education 6.0 and powered by STEMmer, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, medicine, and automation, we deliver modular, sovereign learning across undergraduate, master's, and doctoral programs. Explore our prospectus, where every curriculum is designed to stematize every discipline, dignify local authorship, and credential transformative knowledge. Be stematized, be sovereign. Here, knowledge is authored, not borrowed. Curriculum is credentialed, not copied. Every graduate becomes an architect of transformation. With 2 annual intakes, March and September, the path to innovation is always open. From the logic of automation to the soul of indigenous intelligence, SRU is where tomorrow is designed. Springfield isn't just a university, it's an epicenter of epistemic dignity. Join the movement. Study where learning governs itself. Springfield Research University, the globe is here. Where are you?
Welcome back. Let's continue with our discussion. What strategies can organizations adopt to ensure competence in board appointments?
I think so. Organizations must adopt sovereign strategies of renewal. They must enforce term limits, demand meritocracy, elevate diversity, and institutionalize accountability. Appointments must be based on competence, not convenience, vision, not loyalty, renewal, not recycling. Institutions must treat board service as sovereign duty, not ceremonial reward. And advocate. Competence must be the compass, accountability the anchor, renewal the rhythm. Only then will boards thrive.
Thank you, Professor. How does board renewal contribute to long-term profitability and trust?
Thank you, Advocate. So board renewal is not disruption. It is investment. It is the sovereign act of planting new seeds of vision, of refreshing the soil of governance, of ensuring that institutions do not delay and decay under the weight of repetition. Fresh voices bring innovation. New strategies bring competitiveness. Accountability brings trust. So profitability thrives when boards are competent. Trust thrives when boards are transparent. Institutions thrive when boards are renewed. So renewal is the discipline that protects progress, the vigilance that protects trust, the architecture that protects profitability. So recycling incompetence drains profits, erodes trust, and sabotages futures. It is the silent theft of shareholder value, the betrayal of employee dignity, the erosion of customer confidence. It is the moment when governance ceases to be investment and becomes indulgence, when boards cease to be architects and become saboteurs. So I say, renewal is not optional, it is sovereign. It is the architecture of profitability and the fortress of trust. So it is the sovereign covenant between institutions and citizens, between boards and shareholders, and between governance and the future. Only in renewal lies resilience. Only in competence lies competitiveness. Only in accountability lies trust.
Thank you, Professor. Professor, what is your final advisory to institutions trapped in the cycle of incompetence?
Thank you, Advocate. So I say, break the cycle or be broken by it. Recycling incompetence is not continuity, it is collapse. It is the slow corrosion of trust, the silent sabotage of progress, the betrayal of sovereignty. Institutions must choose renewal over repetition, competence over convenience, sovereignty over stagnation. They must dare to disrupt the comfort of mediocrity, to dethrone the recycled names of failure, to enthrone the fresh voices of merit. For the future does not belong to boards that recycle incompetence. It belongs to boards that dare to renew. The future belongs to boards that elevate merit, that enforce accountability, that enthrone competence as the sovereign currents of governance. It belongs to leaders who understand that renewal is not instability, it is resilience. That competence is not optional, it is sovereignty. That accountability is not theater, it is trust. So I say, do not recycle incompetence. Recycle excellence. Do not recycle failure. Recycle vision. Do not recycle mediocrity. Recycle merit. For in the renewal lies resilience, and in competence lies sovereignty. And only in sovereignty lies the future of governance. Thank you, Advocate, for your time.
Thank you, President, for reframing board service not as recycled privilege, but as sovereign duty. Your insistence on competence, accountability, and renewal reminds us that leadership is not recyclable, it must be renewable. To our audience, if you're ready to elevate governance into sovereign clarity and to break cycles of mediocrity with competence and courage, Springfield Research University awaits you. Visit www.springfieldresearchuniversity.net and join the mission to structure institutions with sovereign wisdom. That brings us to the end of this diagnostic edition of Springfield Career Insights. May tonight's reflections provoke accountability, renewal, and sovereign progress. I am Clarence, your host. Good night.
Lena, hey, hey, siyakubuka, tikiti letu Tanzania kiwa, hey, hey, siyakubuka, sonke siyavumelana, ngemjululo mushe sonke similela, hey, hey, siyakubuka, tikiti letu Tanzania kiwa, hey, 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 siyakubuka, sonke siyavumelana, ngemjululo mushe sonke similela.